Good morning, Debbie. I am doing well. I hope you are doing well as also. Oops, forgot to turn up the mic. Probably be helpful if I did that. I'm going to give it some time, see if anybody else shows up. If not, a couple minutes, we'll get this party started. Doing a live this morning, and then later on today, I have a premiere video that is at 12 o'clock. That's Pacific Standard Time. So judge accordingly to your area code, wherever you are in the world, I guess. Cement Shoes, good morning. Purple, good morning. Welcome. Gayla Denson, good morning, Mr. Finley. How's things? Not bad. Not bad. School's out for the summer, so I've got my son at home with me during the day. So I'm kind of trying to adjust my schedule around that. So I'll figure it out though. Can't sweat the little things in life. You know, nobody's schedule ever stays the same exactly, day in, day out, even if we want it to. I fell asleep last week and missed the music live. I was in the middle of rewatching it and it got taken down. Yeah, it got flagged, obviously. Got flagged by YouTube. That's not the only thing that they, but you fight with YouTube over so many of the little things. I don't want to bother people with it, but they flagged or they tag or age gate some video content that I make because they say it violates the terms of agreement on excessive violence, and I'm like, how is that even possible? It's kind of like exactly what happened to Jim Can't Swim and his content on that channel, and how they said that it violated the terms of agreement. They're kind of going through and scrubbing the system, and they changed what is advertisable and what is uh, okay for their system, I guess, within their terms. But as they change it, their computer system, the wording, they change the wording, and then the computer system has to catch up to it. So it'll age gate it, meaning you have to be 21 or over. And if they don't know you, if they don't know your name, or if you don't use your own account or you use somebody else's account, if they don't know the age of that individual, you may never see the video. It happens to people all the time. Good morning, okie dokie. So, all right. So I wanted to kind of touch on three cases today. One's a little bit longer than the other one, so we'll do that one last. But on June 4th of this year, we marked the 12th year anniversary of the disappearance of Kyron Horman. In case you don't remember who Kyron Horman was, he was a 7-year-old second grader who vanished from his school, elementary school. He was there for a science fair. He had spent weeks putting together, a display board and a project on red tree frogs, and he just vanished. Now, his stepmother was there at the actual science fair, and she was the last person who ever saw Kyron. And she said she left the school. There is no surveillance of her or any parents. They didn't have it then. They do now. But back then they didn't have surveillance that showed the parking lot, and all the entrances and exits of the school. So we don't know what happened to Kyron, but it's been 12 years today. The reason why this comes back up, besides the anniversary of it, is the Center for Missing and Exploited Children had named Kyron as one of the top 100 missing children. They, and they released a new age enhanced photo of what Kyron would look like today at the age of 19. It has been 12 years. So that age enhanced photo was done with the NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. But they still believe that he was either taken by somebody he knew, or there was somebody else in the area that actually was targeting Kyron. But they don't think it was a random act, like some stranger just came onto the school ground and said, "Oh, there's a kid, I'll take him." So, and the chances of him walking away from the school and never being found, because they searched all around him in every scrap of the wooded area and streets and everywhere, for home security, ring bell footage, all of it, to try to see if they could find any, signs of Kyron, but he just vanished. But he has been named now to the top 100, children on the Missing and Exploited network that is the most likely in danger at 12 years now. Top 100. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on that. I will be posting a age enhanced photo of what he would look like today at the age of 19 on my actual the community tab. So look for that later on after this stream. Okay, next one. John Hinckley Jr. Going back even farther, John Hinckley Jr., who is he and why is he important? For those around the world who may not know who John Hinckley Jr. is, he tried to assassinate then President Ronald Reagan because he wanted to gain the fascination, and he was fascinated with, and he wanted to gain the affection of actress Jodie Foster. And you may remember her as Clarice from Silence of the Lambs and a bunch of other movies. But he had in his mind that he could gain, her love and affection by killing Ronald Reagan. Well, when you're insane in the membrane, you don't think all that clearly. But John Hinckley Jr. has been released from the insane asylum where he was, if you call it that, or state hospital or state mental hospital. People throw out different terms for the same place. But John Hinckley Jr. has been out for some time now, living in Virginia. If you like to see what John Hinckley Jr. is up to, he has his own YouTube channel, and he has more followers and subscribers than me. So go over to John Hinckley Jr.'s channel and check out him playing music. You can see him cooking in some of his older videos. Not on YouTube. I think you have to go to Instagram and follow him there, and then you can find the links to, but he still has them on YouTube. He just unlisted the older cooking videos. But John Hinckley Jr., because he's worth following and subscribing to more than me. But anyways, I digress. And he has been released from all probationary restrictions, except for one. He did not get back the right to bear arms. He had his rights to bear arms taken away from him. But now he can actually petition the courts and the government to regain his actual rights to own and to bear arms. But after 41 years, 2 months, and 15 days, he finally has all restrictions removed. Yes, 41 years, 2 months, and 15 days. And he's been released from everything. He doesn't have to pay parole. He can travel wherever he wants now. He doesn't have to check in with anybody if he decides to move across the street from an elementary school. He can do whatever he wants. And that also means that John Hinckley Jr. can now go on with his world tour or tour. It's kind of funny how they put it on Instagram, as it was supposed to be a tour. He's going to go to New Jersey, New York, Boston, and he's like tic-tacking back and forth up and down the East Coast. The last show was supposed to be in North Carolina, but all of that got canceled because of COVID the last 2 years. But now he's able to resume that. And you think that maybe nobody would go see that? Every single one of the shows that he had booked were sold out. Yes, people want to see John Hinckley Jr. play the acoustic guitar and sing cover songs and some original songs. There is no song that I know of from his discography or songs that he's written, whatever you want to call it, about Ronald Reagan or Jodie Foster. But he does have several songs that do kind of hint to, taking people out or ending the suffering of others. So take it for what you will. But he has been released from all federal probation requirements, except for the right to bear arms. He has to petition the court to get that one back. He owned in Sacramento is up for sale for just under $5 million. Wow. I did not know that. I thought it was an automatic life sentence if you tried to do what he did. Yeah, but he was found mentally insane. He did not actually cement shoes. He was not sentenced. So it's kind of like what would happen. Let's just say Lori Vallow, who was sent off to the state hospital for restorative care. Hinckley was found incompetent to stand trial and was sent to the state hospital. And again, he spent 41 years, 2 months, and 15 days. Well, that was his total release. He was released several years ago, but they slowly transitioned him back into society. They first released, they gave him weekend passes so he could go home and visit his mother and his alien family members. And then he came back. He didn't get into trouble, didn't violate any of the rules. And then they slowly did that until they released him completely into the state of Virginia, where he's been living, paying his rent. Oh, and by the way, he gets Social Security disability every month, and he will for the rest of his life. As long as he stays on his medication, they have deemed him not a risk to the public. But with his Social Security disability, that's how he pays his rent and his living expenses. So he's not out there, buying, $1 million homes. Who knows? Maybe his music career will take off, and he will actually gain the love and admiration of Jodie Foster eventually. I mean, stranger things have happened in this world, right? But I would not go near him. Diana. Good morning, Tammy. Good morning, Miss June Bennett. Good morning. Squeaky Froman. No, that's not Bundy, but Squeaky Froman was one of the followers of Charles Manson. I had to think there for a second. I was like, I can picture him, and I wanted to say Bundy. After a while, your mind you swim with all these monsters in the sea, trying to read about them and learn about them. Your mind sometimes gets a little swamped by you can picture the pictures of all the killers. You try to put names to them all. It's like, which one beheaded women? Oh yeah, that was Bundy. Crazy mind I have. It probably helped Jodie Foster figure out she was gay a lot sooner. Poor Jodie. Good morning, K-Dog. Yeah. So since you mentioned K-Dog, Miss June Bennett, that is one of the things that I had to stop on this channel. I wanted to bring it back, but one of the pieces of content that I got flagged for discrimination against a protective group. I kid you not. Every single one of those videos, I got flagged as being discriminatory towards a protective group, is how YouTube actually words it. They said that and when I said, look, this is just a comedy skit, and I fought it. Some of them I won, some of them I lost. Uh, so I mean, no money on it, and nobody will be able to see them. They actually took down half of those comedy skits about where I pretended to be K Dog or another inmate in jail with Josh Duggar, yeah, and extorting him for money. It was all comedy, but they said that it was and harmful to a protective group. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to bring it back without actually doing what the comedy was all about, anyways. But we'll see. Maybe I can figure out a way to do it and put it on one of my other channels. So, what about children? Aren't they a protected group? You would think so, Cement Shoes. But how many YouTube channels do you know of? I can think of at least a dozen off the top of my head that exploit children for views. Either the creator brings their children on, or in other cases, it's just their children playing, with items in front or doing unboxing videos in front of the camera. I've seen everything from naked kids in a bathtub to kids running, around, in bathing suits that probably are not the most appropriate for little boys and little girls, but they do it anyways. But YouTube doesn't seem to object to that too much. But you make a comedy skit about Josh Duggar, needing to pay extortion in a video, and because another guy, is going to call in, Chocolate or somebody, to take care of him. That's an issue. So you can fight the system so much, but in the end of the day, it comes down to, this is YouTube's sandbox, and if they don't want me here and if they don't like my content, they can kick me the hell off the platform and delete everything that I've ever done. And it happens to a lot of people. We know we can see what happened to Jim Can't Swim. That's towards the bottom of like the harshest outcome, but they can delete your channel and 100% of your content, and then block you from even logging in to see your channel, and everything's been gone. Then they'll give you a link. Well, at least they're supposed to, where you can you can try to fight, but you get one chance to fight everything. They can come up with 500 different reasons to that you're off of the platform. You get one chance. You get one box. I think it's 2,300 characters to be able to fight it. And if they don't like it, or if somebody reads and says, you know what, I think it was making fun of my group, or it was poking fun at this that I don't like, they don't have, all they have to do is just say, you know what, we're not going to, rule the other way. That person's gone forever. I know personally of several channels that are gone right now. Right off the top of my head, though, if I have to throw something out there, Velvet Crime. She had right around 235,000 subscribers. And when they booted her off of YouTube, you can't find her content anywhere. It's all gone. I mean, all gone. You can't find her name. You can't find her videos. You can't find anything. It's all gone. And she will never be back on YouTube. She can try opening up another account, but if they catch her, they'll just ban it again immediately, and she gets no appeal if she tries to open another channel. But yet there are people like, well, let's just say he's over the pond, who harass, stalk, dox, people and the victims of crimes, and he does it all and exploits people for money. And likewise, your example about children as well. That seems to go by the wayside, and they come after these people here for doing what is within the rules. They just don't like it. So, and And to a certain extent, for the longest time, also the LGBTQ plus community was unmonetizable on their platform because they didn't like that they were spreading what they called a message, and so they couldn't get their stuff, monetized. They couldn't get their content, in front of the masses. But then YouTube was like, oh yeah, after a couple of lawsuits, maybe we should change this. So that's the world we live in. Will or roll? Yet the media openly discriminates against white Europeans who built the country. I don't know so much about that. Will or roll? Oh, will roll. Oh, roll. Willow roll. There's a lot of discrimination on the platform, and don't ever leave this. So I'm gonna end this here in a second, but this little rant. But don't ever think that YouTube does not have their own political agenda. They don't have their own ideological ideas on every subject matter. If you just read through the terms and conditions, you can definitely see that YouTube has slowly, from the beginning to now where it is, has made their entire platform a lot more liberal leaning. And that not that there's anything wrong with liberal leaning, but they definitely, kind of push aside everybody that does not politically or ideologically, believe in exactly where the company is. They say they don't, but you can put up two videos of the same subject matter with the same title, just change the host of it from, say, Rush Limbaugh to John Oliver. You can put those two up and they could say, read the exact same script. The John Oliver one is going to get a hell of a lot more than the Rush Limbaugh, version. And a lot of it is about who is the actual host and who's actually giving you the message. So I can't tell you, after Matthew McConaughey went to at the White House and did his little speech about the guns, and I think he is truly passionate about what he's talking about. How much that filled my news feed for from that day until about 2 days ago. I mean, all my suggested everything, and I was like, I want to watch a video on fixing the air compressor in my truck, and even then, it came up as a suggestion. So that's the system. It's their sandbox. All right, moving on. So the last one, this one's kind of long. So I found this article a little bit interesting. There was an article that was originally posted by another news outlet, and it was a poll. It was a question and then a poll, and they asked for viewers to rate who was the cruelest serial killer by ever that has ever been caught, convicted, and prosecuted, and all that. Let's go through the whole thing. But who was the cruelest? And they rated them from, it was the top 20. But for time's sake, I'm going to cut this down to the top 10. These were voted on by the people themselves on how many, and this is, I'll tell you how many votes each one of them got, and how they ended up on the list. At number 10, Samuel Little. The serial killer Samuel Little was active as a serial killer between 1969 and 2005. He strangled most of his victims to death with either his hands or rope. But there were two women that he physically beat to death with a closed fist. 3,786 people voted that he was the cruelest serial killer of all time. And quickly before I go, number 1 has the least votes. Number 10 has the most. So I'm kind of doing it in reverse. Next one, number 9 was John Wayne Gacy. I don't know how he was only number 9. I would have put him, right at the top of the list. He was active as a serial killer between 1971 and 1978. Most of the victims of John Wayne Gacy were young men, runaways, laborers, and people he believed society had cast aside. Now, if you watch later interviews with Gacy before his execution, he totally denies that he did anything except for kill one guy. He doesn't know how all those bodies ended up underneath his house. Right, John? Nobody was buying it then. Nobody's buying it now. But his youngest victim was 14 years old, a runaway that he had actually, murdered and put underneath his home. That was his youngest victim. Again, active from 1971 to 1978. Number 8 on the list was William George Bonin. I can English a little. Bonin, active as a serial killer between 1978 and 1980. Confessed to killing 21, but his DNA evidence and other evidence was later, it linked him to 36. Why was he, again, voted number 8 on the list? That the things that people had noted in the comment section was that there was at least four women that he killed that he knew were most likely pregnant. 4. And he didn't work by himself. William George Bonin also worked with others, and that's the scary part, was not all of his associates who helped him. And in case you don't remember the name William George Bonin, he was also called the Freeway Killer. There were several different names for him over the course of his little career there of killing people. But at least 4 people worked with him or were associated and helped him in the actual abduction, the murder, disposing of the evidence, and disposing of the actual body. 4. He worked with at least 4. In the early, late 77, 78, he worked with 2 guys. By the time mid-1980s came around and the police were closing in on him, he was working with 2 completely separate ones. They've only caught 3 of the 4. They don't know the true identity of the other guy who was with him originally in late 77, 78. Could be another serial killer out there. Obviously, he'd like to abduct, rape, and murder women and other people, who got in his way. So, don't get him wrong. He actually liked to kill both women and men. Kind of different. Most serial killers only kill either women or they kill men. But there are very few who cross over who kill both, and have a sexual motivation to it. All right. Number 7 on the list is Ted Bundy, active as a serial killer between 1973 and 1978. He killed over 50, but there is speculation his actual count might be closer to 60, 65. Some people have pushed it all the way up to 100, but a lot of those are just, there's circumstances where somebody was murdered and they want to link it to somebody who was known. So they say it's linked to Ted Bundy, or they say in the media that it's the MO was close to what Bundy did. I mean, but again, you have to think about between 1973 and 1978, Bundy had a type. He liked women with long brown hair. He liked skinny women. He liked them in vulnerable, positions, where they were out of their element or they were willing to help. But he got them off of their heightened alert, helping somebody with a broken arm, carry books to his car, or a cast on his foot. Where he had all kinds of different ruses to help, try to get women to his car. Once you got in the car, you didn't get back out alive because he had made the door inoperable from the inside. Excuse me. But he makes the list not only for his youngest victim, but for that people noted that he was voted. They voted for him on the fact that he actually beheaded not one, but a couple of his victims and took their heads home. But he was also into necrophilia, kind of like the next guy, Gary Ridgway, who was active as a serial killer between 1982 and 2000. He killed 49, but has been linked to 23 additional unsolved murders in and around the Pacific Northwest. But those cases are still open, and they haven't said one way or another if they are, Gary Ridgway's. Gary doesn't talk about his murders. He won't. And Gary he'll write to you and talk to you about plants and flowers and the weather, but he won't talk about his actual crimes with anyone, not even the law enforcement at this point. It just kind of is like, nope. But he will tell you if he is ever let out of prison, he will kill again. So, but he killed hookers, homeless people, drug addicts, runaways. Those were his main victims. Younger women. He didn't have a hair color type or a body type. He just took whoever he wanted. And if he really wanted you and he couldn't get you right away, he would watch you for days until he found you in a position where you couldn't defend yourself. But that was Gary Ridgway, number 6, and he was 2,416 votes. Number 5 on the list is Randy Kraft. Some people may not remember Randy Kraft as well, but he was definitely a sadistic son of a beep. He was active as a serial killer between 1971 and 1983. Killed 16 women, but later DNA and additional evidence linked him to 19 additional murders after he was actually convicted and tried, and the entire thing. Now, while I'm here on number 5, I know we're halfway through the list. I want to tell and make sure that everybody understands when it comes to serial killers, if they say that this person killed 50, 80, 90, 100, 200 people, but you then pull them up on on Wiki, and it says that he was convicted of 2 or he only had 10 murders, that doesn't mean that they didn't have the evidence to be able to convict him of all the additional murders that he was linked to. These men have been linked, and they would have been found. They could have picked any one of them. But what's the sense of the government going through and prosecuting, say, Gary Ridgway for every single one of the murders? Yes, it does bring some justice to the family, but it would be an atrocity, to try to drag something out that would take 10 years to prosecute versus we can get him on these 3. These are the strongest cases, and we can get the needle in his arm on these 3 cases. So they say, look, we're just going to take those 3 of the 40 some murders that we know he did, that we have the evidence that he did, and convict him of that. And then, give him, life in prison, or get him the needle, and then watch the governor of the state decide, well, we're going to pull a moratorium on the death penalty. But all right, so we're on to Randy Kraft, active killer, 1971 to 1983, killed 16 women, 19 were linked to him later on. More than enough evidence to convict him on each of the additional 19 victims. Number 4 on the list with 2,305 votes was Jeffrey Dahmer. And here's an interesting thing about Jeffrey Dahmer for all my serial killer buffs out there. When did Jeffrey Dahmer first start killing? I'll give you a minute to think about that. When did he start killing? You look at the evidence, it says his first murder was in 1978. You look at the evidence itself, and that has been linked, where Jeffrey has been linked to murders before, at least 1, possibly 2 murders before then. His real murder spree might have started in the early part of 1977. Yes, a whole year almost, exactly to the date when they believe his murder spree started. But he was an active serial killer between 1977, we're going to go with that, and 1991. 16 bodies and partial bodies were found in his actual apartment, in barrels, in the tub, in the freezer, in the refrigerator. Yeah, Jeffrey never wanted to get rid of his victims because he truly believed that each and every one of his victims He took in their energy and their souls into him. Not the knowledge, apparently, because if he did, he would have gotten rid of them instead of keeping them in 55-gallon drums inside of his apartment. But the two that were originally linked to him may have been murdered and dumped outside of his parents' home in the wooded area nearby. Human remains were found within a quarter of a mile of Jeffrey Dahmer's parents' home. They can't say 100% that those remains belong to Jeffrey Dahmer. He killed these people. They could have been a hunter who died of a heart attack and nobody found the body right away. And then years later, all they found was bones, and animals had scattered most of the remains around. So they don't know. But they do believe that there's a possibility, again, of at least one, maybe two murders were committed in 77. All right, number 3. Oh, and by the way, Jeffrey Dahmer had 1,990 votes for Jeffrey Dahmer. Number 3 is Richard Ramirez. Yes, a small window of murdering, but he did a lot in that 1 year. Killed 13. But in 2020, they were able to link him through DNA evidence to an additional murder. From 1985 all the way to 2020, when they finally updated and they were able to look at the evidence of that murder and able to link it back to Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez had 1,906 exact votes for being, on this list at number 3. Again, they're in reverse from top to bottom. And the next one on the list, Richard was voted on the list for, there's like 9 different things on the list of, everything from leaving notes to stalking to everything is on the list for why Richard Ramirez actually made it. Jeffrey Dahmer, obviously, again, I forgot to say his cruelty outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and everything else about Jeffrey Dahmer was, obviously murdering people, keeping them there, and then some of his favorites he kept in the refrigerator so he could skull F them later on. Literally, that was why he kept their heads in the actual refrigerator and freezer. Okay, number 2 on the list was Richard D'Angelo, active serial killer between 1978 and 1986. Killed 13 young women, but his actual murder count is probably closer to 17. Joseph D'Angelo, he used multiple different ruses to gain his victims. He posed as a police officer for a couple. But his main one was that he was a photographer for a fashion magazine, or he worked in the in that type of industry to try to lure women away, and he was very successful. He even got victims to come to him, but Joseph D'Angelo was cruel because he made the list because one of his victims he knew was pregnant before he ever killed her or did anything to her. But they only count that body, that kill as one. They don't count the infants. That's it's more jurisdictional. If you murder someone, they count that as a murder. They don't count that as 2 murders, even though the host, the mother, dies and then before the baby dies. So even if you look at Christopher Watts' case in the state of Colorado, they do not have a murder, a law that actually is on the books to where he could have been convicted or charged with the murder of Nico, who was unborn. So that's just the way the laws are. And that is the way it is in several states, that if you murder someone who is pregnant, the death of the baby is not counted because it could have been stillborn. There's a lot of different things that they go through. I don't agree with it. I'm just telling you what the actual laws are. But Joseph D'Angelo is made the list for 1,873 total votes. And number 1 on the list is the Long Island serial killer. Uncaught. They have no idea who the Long Island serial killer is. And this was, so if you look at the list going down, this would have been number 10 in reverse. But over a 20-year span, They don't know if it was just one or if it was two people, someone working with the person who is the Long Island serial killer. Now, there have been stories that have been released out there that the Long Island serial killer case may have been solved or has been solved. But according to the actual evidence of the case and the detectives who are working this case, it's still an open investigation. They do not believe that the Long Island serial killer stopped. Number one. Number two, they don't believe the Long Island serial killer has ever been apprehended in jail. Therefore, that's how it stopped, or anything along the line. Because there are cases that match the Long Island serial killer that are in North Carolina and in Florida. So the Long Island serial killer may have moved from Long Island, New York, down to the East Coast, and may be to this day hunting and killing young women in the state of Florida. So that is all of the 20 voted on by people. I won't give you the name of the actual website that, let's just say they have a YouTube channel as well, and they call themselves Blank News. Oh, I know a guy from Long Island. I think he did it. Hi, Francie. Good morning. I'm sorry if I missed some people. Ed Kemper reminds me of barbershop quartet singer. I thought Smith Shoes. Out of all the serial killers that I've read about, Ed Kemper is one of those that are. I would have to definitely put him in my top 5 of serial killers who I find the most interesting. You would think that maybe it should be like Bundy or someone else along that lines, or Gacy, or you can figure out what makes Ted tick in a heartbeat. You can figure out what Gacy is all about. Gacy, he never wanted to admit it, but Gacy was a closet homosexual, and his entire life was all about trying to suppress that homosexual, those feelings within inside himself, and the abuse that he took from his father, his father's brother, so his uncle, and that side of the family pushed him to suppress that in his feelings in his life in the background. And that was from a young child on. They ridiculed and beat that boy. And he kept that inside for the longest time until he moved out to, I think it was Las Vegas, where he worked as an assistant coroner or somewhere in the mortuary business. And that's when everything started to creep up in his mind, and he decided it was like somebody flipped a switch with Gacy. But Kemper, back to Kemper, I find him from a psychological standpoint extraordinarily interesting because he obviously is a very bright man. He figured out not only once but several times how to fool the entire system into making them believe he wasn't who he was, that he wasn't insane, that he didn't do these crimes, and that he was just somebody living his life right in front of the police department. They never, ever looked at him or thought of him as the actual murderer. And if it wasn't for the fact that Kemper called them and told them after he killed his mother that he did it, he called his friend, who was an actual detective, or he considered him a friend. Detective thought maybe, the other way, but he called him and confessed to it. But Kemper, in extraordinary, there's a lot more there than a lot of people can put their fingers on and say, this was his victim and this is why he picked her up. She was hitchhiking. She put herself in a vulnerable situation. That wasn't the case with Kemper. Kemper was able to convince women to not only get in the car by themselves, but get in the car with a friend and then kill them both. Kill one while the other one watched. He was able to do that. And it was just like, how could you even do that? Why would you not? Why, if you're the other friend, you're watching your friend be murdered, why wouldn't you be screaming to the top? You only have a couple of seconds left alive. Just scream. Do anything. Fight. You can see what he's doing to your friend. But he had such a way to do it that he never really got into or divulged in so much of detail. But there's a lot there behind the scenes that is going on. He may be if there's a real psychopath out there, I would say that Kemper is definitely on that list. But that's just me. I find him extraordinarily interesting from the psychological standpoint, not from the rest of it. I mean, there's a little bit about the abuse and how his mother abused him. I always wondered why she wasn't like the third victim after he killed his grandparents and he got out. Why didn't he just go right after her? He knew she was the reason why he was the way he was, and he was never going to be able to have a normal life. But he didn't. He waited all the way to the end to kill her and just kept on with the abuse. Leon Lakes was the 80s incel king when incel was waiting to be invented. Leon Lakes is an interesting guy too. Do you think he has more victims than he told us? Kemper? No. Kemper, he wanted to sit down and he wanted to talk about everything that he did in a lot more detail than you want. Kemper was not only motivated by rage, but the sexual desire and what he saw as society shunning him for how big he was. The police department denied him basically entry into the police department because he was so big, and so in just his size alone intimidated people. He was more than smart enough and physically able to pass all the requirements to become a police officer, and that's scary. And just how close he actually came to becoming an actual officer. But when it came to each and every one of his victims, he told the police every gross detail of everything that he did with each victim. So are there ones out there? If there are, I put it at less than a 5% chance that there are. If there are, those are ones that he is living over and over again with himself. But he wanted the notoriety. He wanted them to know exactly who he was, the monster he really was, and just how dumb the system was because they couldn't keep him behind bars. I mean, he already killed his grandparents, and after he killed his grandmother, then his grandfather, he stayed right there and then called home to tell his mother what he did. So they locked him up in an insane asylum. They said he was, insane. Because that is insane, to murder your grandparents and then just sit there and wait for the police to show up. And then later on, after he killed his mother and her friend and he ran, he took off, he called the one person he knew he could confide in to tell. And he knew he was a cop. I mean, there was no, way around that, but he did it anyways. And with the father, baby. With some mayo. Don't forget the nice bottle of Chianti. Yeah, you need a nice bottle of Chianti. Well, this video is not going to get monetized anyways. I already know it. As soon as I wanted to do this list of top, my top 10, there were 20, but I took the top 10 of them, for serial killers who were the cruelest. I knew I wasn't going to get monetized. Nope. If smoking triggers you, look away. Oh, that boy, I missed a lot of comments. They should make a movie about Kemper. They have. There have been several made-for-TV movies about Kemper. I I can't remember what the gentleman's name is, but he was on a short-lived TV series, not Highway to Heaven, but it was like one of those shows like that in the 80s. But he's also done bit parts here and there in movies. He's a big lumbering individual. He did a couple of biopics. One about the story of obviously I'm dating myself here a little, but Gentle Ben, the TV show. He played the actor, and did recreations of the TV show, for that biopic or whatever you call it, mini doc or whatever you call it. I can't remember what they call these stupid things. Oh yeah, Tammy. He killed his mother, his grandmother, his grandfather, and his mother's friend. Bob Buradella ran a flea market in Westport, Kansas City, Missouri, where he put a woman's skull in his shop window. Gene, and good morning. We got a roll over here. Hold on. New messages. Okay. I ran across a story just like that the other day. What did I do with this? Okay. His name is James Teal. Teal. I won't ruin the surprise of the entire thing, but let's just say this man's skull turned up at a shop where you go to have seances, have your palm read, and alike, and it turned up on a shelf in the background where this person had this business, and it had an actual little piece of wire and a tag on it with the guy's name. But I won't ruin how the rest of it goes. But this happened. James Teal was murdered in 1922. But I won't ruin the rest of it for you. But this just came down. I don't have to go. Well, his skull was recovered last year. Murdered in January 3rd, 1922. His skull was just recovered this past year in 2021. Yes, definitely smoke him if you got him. BTK was original. He was. Raider. I mean, there are some others out there that I would love to talk to. Gary doesn't write back anymore. I think I bored him. He said to the cops, "You lied to me." He has a vote for the stupidest to believe cops when they said they couldn't trace him from a floppy disk. Oh, the BTK. Yeah. Or how about just doing it from some location or anything where it can be traced back to you. Go to a thrift store, buy a typewriter, type it out, send it to them, and discard the damn thing in a landfill. Drop it off on a sidewalk near a homeless camp. There's a lot of ways to get to cover your tracks that way, but he didn't. And a lot of these serial killers, eventually they get caught because they become very cocky. They believe that they can't get caught and they won't be caught. That's why it's always surprised me that they never caught the Zodiac. Now there are people they think was it Lee, Ash Lee, whatever the hell his name was. They believe that he was a serial killer, the Zodiac, but until I see all the evidence that points to him, I don't believe it. There's an awful groaning voice. He killed women who lived 3 doors down from him. They would have, even if he didn't send that information, the BTK didn't, they would have eventually caught him. They were on the right track to catch him anyways, because they eventually realized how that he was getting into their homes. He would have bored them to death. How did the police get BTK's daughter pap smear from the university with HIPAA violation? Does that mean every pap smear woman gets is kept for DNA cells to be tested? No, Miss June Bennett. And the HIPAA it's not a HIPAA violation unless they release publicly to someone who is not able to be in the system of information. Let me explain that a little bit more in clarity. First off, I don't work in the medical field. My wife did for over 27 years. My mother-in-law for probably close to 50 years. And a lot of my family has worked in the medical field. When it comes to your personal information underneath the HIPAA rules, they cannot share it with anyone who shouldn't have it. They can share it with your doctor. That your doctor can then, change your name to a code and send it out to a university to be studied. But they have to go all the way back to the original. And he can do that. You sign, that you go into the doctor and he's like, I'd like you to sign here, that we can have a university, look at this, pap smear. And it tells you, that your name will not be disclosed or whatever. But you sign that away. How the police got the actual the evidence itself was they got a court order for it, and that allowed them the access to the records. Now, it wasn't just those records; it was all records. Does this mean that all women's pap smears are eligible to be tested for DNA? No, unless somebody gets a court order or somebody violates HIPAA like the doctor does, and which didn't happen in that case. So that happens a lot to catch serial killers, especially serial rapists. They know that this individual collected mementos, things. Maybe he collected the underwear from each and every one of his rape victims, and they can prove he did this. But now they have 14 other pairs that he kept. Well, they're going to have cells on them. If they can test them, they'll get a profile, and then they can do what's called familial DNA search, going that way to your ancestry. Okay, and then here comes it pops up 3 names in the family tree within local geographic location, because most serial killers and serial rapists only work within a certain geographical location to their actual home, which is in the middle. So you take a 50-mile radius and you circle it around their actual location where they live, and that's where they hunt. There are obviously exceptions, like Ted Bundy could hunt anywhere and did. Gacy, did. And others, but they like to hunt where they feel safest. So. And given back to the familial DNA, and they can say, okay, here's the ones that match through other ancestry records where people have taken 23andMe. When you take those DNA tests, or other people in your family have, they're uploading it to a database, and you're giving away the right of anonymity immediately. And then they can say, okay, this DNA matches here, and here are 4 possible victims. And then they just get those names from that family tree, and they go to each one and they talk to them. And if one was a victim of a rape, they can say, "Would you come in and have a DNA test done?" So we think we may have have caught the individual who did this to you. And of course, who doesn't want to come in and give up or just give us a cheek swab? to say, look, I'm not going to testify. I've already lived through the trauma of this. I don't want to do that again. But if it'll help you solve this case, I'd say 8 out of 10 would more than willing to do it. But their DNA is also then put into CODIS and other systems as well. You have to think of it, everything as a circle, just like how the serial killer or serial rapist hunts. Everything comes around. You give up your DNA here, you can give up your DNA there. There was a university professor at BYU, Brigham Young University, who went around on campus of BYU and he collected cigarette butts and he just snipped each one into his own individual bag, and he was able to get DNA profiles from it. And obviously he was doing it because he wanted to expand the DNA genealogical base for the Mormon church. That was his real intention. He wasn't trying to catch any criminals or anything else. But of those DNA, without releasing the information, and the church has actually protected him and the actual evidence itself, they were able to say that at least 40 of the people whose DNA popped up were connected to either being a victim or the perpetrator of a crime where DNA was left behind. 40 of, I don't know how many he collected, probably hundreds of samples, but because he wanted to expand their genealogical database. And that's what the Mormon church has been doing since they've blessed every grave on earth that they can possibly do. But they've also been storing up the DNA profiles of everyone on earth that they can. You should write about that. People would be interested. That's creepy. Hideous. It's surprising what people give up when they're not even thinking about it. Never forget Bobby Joe, long, scary eyes, deep set darkness. Good morning, Terry S. Welcome. John E. Robinson, that's when law enforcement found the address to the storage unit, and one victim was 15 years old, disabled girl, and her mother. Ooh. Arthur Shawcross. Yeah. Surprised. I don't know if he was inside the other 10, but he's one scary son of a. Myself and other women, it happened to, were criticized, calling us attention getters. Don't ever let somebody else victimize you for being a victim. That happens a lot in today's society. Unfortunately, it does. People like hey, this person came forward to destroy this individual because of what they did. I look at it as, I don't know how many of you actually follow sports, but there is a quarterback who used to be with the Texans who got traded to he got signed by the Cleveland Browns by the name of Deshaun Watson. He's a quarterback. And before they actually signed him, there were a number of women who he went to Instagram, and he found women who were small, petite, women who did massages. And each and every one of those massages that he found off of Instagram, he either demanded or forced a happy ending. You can figure out what I mean there at the end, right? He says they were all consensual. They don't. 26 women have come forward out of 66 in a 17-month period. 26 said, no way was it consensual, but the NFL and the law enforcement, with the pressure from the NFL, have decided through the grand juries not to indict him criminally. So they're all suing him civilly for what he did. And each and every one of them, immediately, the media started nitpicking their stories and coming after them. They were victimized, and they're victimizing them again. Don't ever allow somebody to do that to you, and to any of you out there. And I truly am sorry if anything ever like that happens to anybody, but disgusting. Gotta run my errands. Thanks for having me. Bye. Bye, Will. Buy cement shoes and have a great week. You as well. I'm sorry I didn't say hello, Pink Camo. We were young when stalked by Bobby Joe Long. When telling our stories years later, we were called attention getters. It's just sad. That is just sad. I know of a guy that used to live probably about a half a mile from me. When we were kids, the guy just creeped me and my sisters to hell out. And then years later, we found out he had been molesting his own daughters, and he had been molesting other girls in the neighborhood. And when the police initially came out, this was pre-internet. I mean, we didn't even have AOL and dial-up. We didn't even have that yet. Yeah, that's how old I am. But when they came out and they started going door to door to people who lived in the area, trying to find other possible victims, of this man. I mean, they found a lot more that he had molested over the years. And they found one girl who was like 14 that he ended up getting pregnant. It was sick, and she was like a babysitter or something like that. Those parents didn't even know how she got pregnant. They didn't care. But then when they found out about it, they certainly had hell cared. Yeah, he ended up killing himself though before they ever sent him to trial. So a lot of the victims never got any kind of justice. He never did anything to my sisters. So I have two older sisters and two younger sisters. So it was my brother, two sisters, me, two younger sisters. Some of us are still around, some of us are not. Yeah. But a lot of people, my point back to that, I forgot to actually make my point. It was like, I need to drink some coffee. But my point is, though, the local newspaper called into question the stories, and they actually titled the story, about all the allegations of those who came forward. That was 1982, 81. Sad. Yep, I'm older than Google. I'm older than the internet. When I was a kid, if you wanted entertainment, you went outside and did something. You went and played with your friends. The street light came on, you better have your ass back in the house. But it's not the way the world works today, is it? Now that kids don't want to leave their home to even go in their front yard or backyard. We're all worried about the boogeyman who's around the next corner. And the children are like, what do you do out here? They just kind of stare at the sun, kind of like what a turkey does. If you let a domesticated turkey out of its cage and during a rainstorm, it's just kind of sad, but bear with me. They'll hold their head up and drown. They'll open their mouth open and they'll drown themselves because they don't know what rain is. It's never fallen on them. Kids today, a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them, they don't know what the hell do you do outside. Oh, it's a place you go between your car and the school, or you go, outside to, get in the car to go to the store. They don't know what it's like to run around unattended, no parents watching you or having you on one of those doggy leash things. They don't know what the hell to do. And I'm talking about just the kids who go to school with my son. My son is 5 years old. Don't forget that. And there were a lot of kids. We had track and field day, and there were a lot of kids who were 5 years old who just kind of stood around and were like, "Oh, what the hell do you do out here?" We're like, "Okay, you're going to line up here, and you're going to go down there to the other teachers. You're going to run as fast as you can." They they shoot off the start gun, and they always be like, "Okay, I'll walk down there." And they'd walk maybe halfway, three-quarters of the way, and then stop again, look around, like, "Hey, what are those green things on these trees?" Amber Heard verdict does not discourage victims from coming forward. The abused person won the case. Amber Heard, she may get her ass sued again if Johnny Depp wants to do it, though. If anybody's watched the Good Morning America interview with her that she did after the verdict, I mean, she's probably never ever going to pay the money, and I don't think Johnny Depp really wants it. I think it was more of a publicity, win for him. But she may get her ass sued again. He could definitely sue her for what she said on Good Morning America. And I don't know if you've seen the edited or the unedited version, so I have to leave it at that. I didn't follow it. I didn't follow the story at all. To me, the entire Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial, to each their own. All right, let's start off with that. If you enjoyed it and you wanted to watch it and you found it interesting, great. I have nothing against that. I'm just saying it wasn't for me. I had other things better things to do, that I'm following and covering. But it came across to me like a soap opera. That's so that's so sad how couch potato kids are physically unfit. Yeah. Well, I have a friend who is still in the United States Marine Corps, and he worked as a recruiter for I think a year, little over a year, right around there. And he said one of the hardest things about recruiting young women and men into armed services, not just for the Marine Corps, but it's the Navy, the Army, all branches of service, Air Force, probably as well, but that's the Air Force. But the problem is that so many of them do not meet the basic requirements of being physically fit to even enter even the armed services. They can pass the test, the ASVAB, they can pass everything else, but they can't pass the physical endurance testing, the basic requirements of so many pull-ups, so many sit-ups, so many push-ups, and running. They can't do it because they've never done it. And a lot of that is our fault as parents and the communities who elect school boards. We've done away with art, we've done away with music, and we've done away with physical, activity, gym classes in so many school districts across the United States. Budget cuts have come in. The first thing that always goes is the humanities. Goodbye. We don't need you anymore. And then the next thing that gets cut is after school curricular activities, study classes. Advanced classes are always last. And those are the pre-prep classes for the SATs. Those are always last. But if you cut everything else before then, you're not going to have the students who will ever get to those classes. And along the way, we decided dodgeball's not a really good idea because it hurts the inside child. It hurts their emotions. So we're not going to play dodgeball anymore. We're not going to play tag anymore on the playground because it always leaves the slower kid out and it hurts his emotions and his benefit. You're not allowed to play cops and robbers or Indian and cowboy anymore because it's a violent game. I'm not joking at all. We have a 5-page letter that goes home every single year that my school district that says these are the requirements for clothing. They have to spell it out. What's correct for little girls to wear and what's correct for little boys. It's not uniforms. It's no halter tops, for little girls. No strapless dresses for little girls, stuff like that. That kind of common sense. Why the hell would you put that on a little girl, anyways? But and what's required, no speedos for little boys or for little girls. These are things that you have to spell out to the parent who has no idea what is appropriate, So they have to have rules about that. And then comes all of the playground rules and gymnasium and gym class requirements. He must have a shirt that has the school logo on it only. That's the only approved shirt, and each one's $15. He goes to that, and all they do is they sit on the ground with their legs open and they roll a ball back and forth. They're not allowed to run anywhere on school property because the insurance agency has decided that children trip and fall when they run, even on a grass field. So, you put all those things into effect that they've been taught all the way to this point, and no wonder when it came to track and field day, they're looking around going, well, we're not supposed to run here. What do you want us to do? Oh, you want us to bounce this ball or throw this ball? That's against school rules. And even at 5 years of age, he knows. And so many other kids, they don't. Okay, I'm not allowed to run. I'm not allowed to throw things, that could hit other kids and hurt them. I'm not allowed to hurt another kid's, emotionally by, teasing him or even saying, hey, Tommy, you're wearing one cowboy boot and one flip flop today. That's funny. That'll get your ass expelled. So we see them at track and field day, and we're like, why won't they do anything? Because we've taken away all the fun and all the activity that they would have had up to that point. It's sad. My best friend's granddaughter and grandson go to a school where there's no art, there's no music, there is no gym class, and they go in the door, they go to class, they come out that door, and they go. And every kid lines up in line to classroom, to lunch, and back out the door in this reverse order of how they went in the morning. You're number 5 in line, you're number 5 in line later. You're number 2 in line, you're number 2 in line later. That's the world we live in. Especially, I totally agree with you on that one, Francie, especially drug companies. Here's a drug to make you, what was it, Jefferson Airplane that said that? Here's one pill to make you happy, and here's one to, to take that away. Yeah, Amy, it was supposed to be, but it's not anymore. And it don't get any better. In elementary school, in our area, we have elementary school, then we have middle school, then we have high school. They don't get to do anything really physical at school until they are, my son would have to be like, I think 13, 12 or 13. And what a great time to have, a boy doing more physical activities. I've been a boy. I know what living life was like when I was 12 and 13, and then puberty hits and you just can't get rid of the stink off of you. Doesn't matter how much you deodorant or whatever you spray on yourself, you can't take away the stink. It's just there. But you can do your damnedest, but now they tell you you're gonna run, you're gonna stink. And now you're going to undress in front of all your peers. Yeah. Don't forget, no peanut butter. Oh, that's true. Yeah, the food allergies, those are actually not the school requirements. The packet we get, the 5 pages, that's the school board's requirements. Then there are actual individual classrooms. He's not allowed to take peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or peanut butter cookies or anything that was manufactured in a facility that had peanut butter. So, but part of that Biden, the Biden last thing, what do they call that? The last round of stimulus. The last round of stimulus. No one between preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade, I do believe, has to pay for a school lunch. It doesn't matter what age they are. They get free breakfast and free lunch every day during the school year. And then now the school is out for the summer. They have bag lunches that I can take him to if I wanted to, but I'm not going to because what's the point? I can take him to about 3 miles away and they give him 7 bag lunches at a time, brown bag paper lunches. Then the entire thing, it was set up as part of a grant to each and every state. If you don't have this in your state and you have a child, a grandchild, or somebody who is between preschool and third grade, you might want to find out what your state did with the money. But it was to help bring children out of poverty, to make sure that they had the basic education and to give them the basic nutrition in order to learn. And that's something a lot of people don't talk about is if you're starving and even as a little kid, if you're starving and you don't know where your next meal's coming from, you think about that all day long. You're not thinking about what 2 plus 2 is. And the more that goes on, the less, as your body is developing, you can't focus on the actual class activities. And it's a great idea. I mean, billions of dollars went into this program for every single state. Now, I know there were 2 states that did reject it, Florida, and I believe it might have been Texas or Oklahoma. So if you're in one of those 2 states, then your state doesn't have it. But they rejected it just because they decided, well, we don't want the money. And it's part of the Medicare or Medicaid or one of those programs. You can Google it later if you want. But that also, the reason why I brought that up was because of the peanut butter. That also restricts the peanut butter from coming into the school. You don't even have to make a lunch for your child to go to school with, because they're giving your kid free breakfast and free lunch anyway. And the grant goes through, I think, till 2025 or 26 or something like that. So, but if you have a kid between third grade to preschool, they're already getting free snacks or free lunches, or at least your state. And again, unless you're in one of those 2 states. I didn't know about it. Daddy didn't know. I went to the school when the school year started this past year, and I'm like, all right, well, I had to set up a lunch account for my daughter when she went through, same school, elementary school. All right, so I went in to go set up a lunch account, and they're like, there's no reason to. He won't have to have a lunch account until he gets to like the 4th grade. And I'm like, why? And they're like, I'm like, this isn't part of some like reduced lunch program, is it? And they're like, no, it's a federal grant that's been extended out until this period of time. I'm like, how is that possible? And they're like, it was part of the last. They told me all about it. They gave me a printout of it about the last stimulus. A lot of people got the cards, like a debit card, that so you could buy food with it only. Even you didn't have to be on welfare. It was part of the stimulus package. Everybody got it. And they put so much money on it in different rounds. When that program started, is when they got the states got the expansion of the Medicaid, or not, part of the Medicaid program for school lunches from every district in the state, except for apparently 2. Oh, that's really cool, Tammy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got to wrap this up here. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Now, don't forget, I do have a premiere video that is coming out about two unsolved murders. That gets released at 12 o'clock this afternoon. So I hope you can catch that. You can go on my channel right now. And there is a little thing right there at the top of the thing. And it says, remind me, notify me. It actually works. Unlike the bell icon thing that doesn't always work, the notify me system actually will notify you when, 2 minutes or 1 minute before the actual premiere. It's a really short, and that's because I set it that way. So it's not like a 5-minute countdown, but that is at 12 o'clock this afternoon. So Pacific time. So Smith shows 3 p.m. Eastern. Reichart, sorry I didn't see you. I hope you are doing well and I hope you're staying safe out there on the roads of America. But thank you, everyone. You all have a great day. And I hope, again, to see everybody at 12 o'clock for the premiere. Bye.